Briane Nasimok, welcome to the Conquering Everest podcast. How have you been?
I've been fine here in Toronto. Pardon me. It's been a little cold. We had spring, and now we're back to fall. Thank goodness we're not to winter yet.
Right. So glad to have you on. You've got an interesting story, and you've accomplished quite a bit in your life. Before we take the deep dive and go back in time, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just tell the listeners a little bit about who Briane is today.
Brian today. Let me just clear my throat. I am right now focusing on, believe it or not, storytelling. I live here in Toronto, and I've always had a desire to showcase myself, let's say. And so I still continue to do this. But Brian now is, believe it or not, 70 years old.
You don't look it.
I know. I say to people, I'll never go through a second childhood because I haven't been through my first. I've got one shot of AstraZeneca because up here in Canada, I think we're 43rd behind Malawi when it comes to getting our inoculations out. In fact, you guys are sending us the AstraZeneca you're not using, and then we're going to give it back. So it's been a very odd year and a bit. What I really enjoy over the last number of years is doing live event fundraisers where I will write and I'll work with the hosts, and they're just a bunch of intense affairs where you spend a good deal of time helping put together an event that a lot of rich people come to and spend money. And at the end of it, there's a real sense of satisfaction, and it's an affair. You put your time and energy and love into it, and then it's over and you move on to the next. And that's what I think I miss the most. I miss the most of the interactivity with people, but that sense of finishing something, accomplishing something, getting it done is what I've missed a lot over the last year. But over the last year, because of the internet, I've told stories in places like India and throughout the States and Canada, and met a whole bunch of great storytelling people. So it's a situation where you do what you think you can with what it's the old making lemonade out of lemons. I'm also making zest, which sometimes will hurt my knuckles. So
yeah, don't be careful around the graters.
Oh, please. Yeah. Every year there's something at Hanukkah I make, which are potato latkes, and I do the potatoes in a grater, and always there'll be just that little bit of skin in there to add the essence to whatever they're eating.
Just a little flavor, a little more protein, maybe. I don't know.
Oh yeah, let's call it protein.
Protein. So you've got. I'm looking at your website, and we've had a conversation prior, but you've got quite the credits to your name, but it wasn't always. I'm gonna say it wasn't always that way. Based on, or maybe you wouldn't have believed it would have been that way based on your childhood and some of the things that you've had to go through. So if you let's go back in time to little Brian and talk a little bit about your life growing up.
Well, little Brian is always here. Let me tell you that. The other day, little Brian had a dispute with the Reynolds aluminum wrap. It decided to come out of its box as I pulled it, as it will do from time to time. And then it gave little Brian a paper cut. Little Brian destroyed the box that the tinfoil is in. So now I've just got the roll of tinfoil. So little Brian is always there.
As I say, on the sides of the foil, there's two little things you can poke in. I just learned this like about 2 years ago that will actually help keep the foil in the box.
My God, it's great when you can learn something every day of your life.
All my life, I'd been dealing with the darn aluminum foil falling out, but
Now I know. Thank you, but I learned how to kill a box of aluminum foil. Little Brian. It's interesting. On one hand, I came into the world in a pretty safe environment when it came to mother, father, a brother and sister who I didn't realize were half brothers and half sisters till like I was 11. Even though I had 3 sets of grandparents, I was not a bright child. And when I figured it out and thought I might be adopted, they let me know my father had been married to a woman. She died from cancer. He married my mother, who he picked up a bar in Crystal Beach, Ontario, but that's another story. And they had me. But my father was starting to create a very profitable law practice. So I was never wanting for anything. And being the baby and the spoiled brat, I got what I wanted. That was on one hand. On the other hand, I've always been what was referred to as husky, which, as you know, is your parents' word for fat or overweight.
I've been there.
Yes. But one of the embarrassing thing was if I wanted clothes, I had to go to Uncle Milty's men's and boys wear and go to the back corner where they had the husky section for clothes for me, big boned boys. So that had me stand out. And you might notice that on this side of my face, you see a little birthmark. Well, it never was that small until I had a sebaceous cyst when I was 35. It used to go all the way down to my chin. So when I pop up at public school, I am the center of certain ridicule when I play sports even younger. One of the refrains that sticks in my mind was, "Hey, Naza schmuck, you got shit on your face." And as I said, I couldn't run because I was husky and I couldn't fight.
Yeah.
And so for the first little while, I pretty well went into a shell. And I don't know when it was that I started to develop a sort of, not necessarily immediately a sense of humor, but deciding, okay, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to make the first step. Either I will come back on them with something, or I will ridicule myself to take the sting out of it. And I was thinking about this as I prepared for our chat. For the longest time, I thought that people would remember me, not for me, but hey, it's the guy with the birthmark. That's how I thought my terms of reference would be, because I was so insecure about who I was. So it wasn't me, the essence of me, the character of me. It was, hey, physically, I'll remember this guy because of this. And that is something that, as I said, I just thought about that. And the interesting thing is, I never grew a beard until I had a career of working with the opera company. It's a long story. I don't know if we get into it, but there was a festival we were doing where I was playing the character Falstaff, where I would host a series of concerts. And so I grew a beard for it. In my mind, I was going to shave the beard off afterwards. And what would happen after the concert? We'd go to the beer garden and talk with the people who were there. And I'm sitting at the table with an attractive woman, as I would like to do most of my life. And we're talking, and she is a hairstylist, barber, whatever you want to call it. And I'm saying, you know what? I need a trim. And I think, why don't you shave my beard off when I go to see you next week? She says, oh, don't shave the beard off. It makes you attractive. I went, duh. I never thought I was attractive. So I kept the beard. And the interesting thing is, for the next 3 weeks, it was the Casanova period of my life. Because I thought I was attractive. 3 women who had been friends went over to the other side for a while. But then I realized it really didn't make me that attractive. And I really kept the beard until I was doing a one-person show about my life. And I needed to show people the birthmark. And that was like 8 years ago. And I've kept it off ever since. During COVID, I went, well, maybe I'll keep the beard. And then I've seen what it looks like on its growth period. I went, no, I won't. So that was my balance of life for the first 12 years. On one hand, I'm getting ridiculed, I'm fat, I'm insecurities, even though I'm developing a sense of humor. On the other hand, ooh, we've got money coming in, we've got a really nice house, we've got a great cottage in a place called Crystal Beach. Not a palatial cottage, but a nice one. And it wasn't wanting for everything. Although my parents taught me work ethic, I had a paper route. I would sell balloons at the Santa Claus parade. I had odd jobs. I did. So it wasn't that because my family came from a pretty middle class background and they had to struggle, they wanted to teach me struggle. So I had that going for me. When I was 12 years old and I was actually at our cottage in Crystal Beach selling papers at the stand, my father comes and informs us on one Friday, because he would stay in Toronto Monday to Friday and join my sister, my brother, my mother, myself at our cottage on Saturday and Sunday, drive up Friday night. He told us to be prepared for some problems. In Canada, the divorce laws where you had to commit adultery or say you committed adultery. We were very stuck up. So lawyers would arrange women who are called correspondents, and they would be people who would appear to be committing adultery with the clients. There'd be no stooping involved. Just they go to a place called the Seahorse Motel and take suggestive pictures. And this was happening, and everything was cool, and everyone was looking the other way because they knew the law was wrong. And this was before the first Trudeau came in and changed the law.
Right.
Well, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, one of our networks, did an expose called the Shady Lady Affair, where they shot one of these correspondents in the shadows, although it wasn't a correspondent, it was somebody who was pretending to be one. But it made front page headlines, and the government decided here in Ontario they had to crack down. So the only person who was ever prosecuted was my father. So here I am selling papers when I'm 12 years old with my father's picture on it, talking about what he's done. And that was kind of harsh. And then he was disbarred and he was sent to jail, and we lost money because we had fines and investing in legal fees and stuff like that. And I say that the silver spoon was ripped out of my mouth. And then he got back out of jail, and he couldn't be a lawyer, became a mortgage broker. And he was working very, very hard. And there was problems at home with my mom because he still wanted to keep up with the finances, which was putting it more in hock. I used to go to the office with him on Saturday morning because when I was younger, I thought I'd be a lawyer like him. And my dad, and I just put something on Facebook about it. My dad took me to baseball when I was a kid and taught me how to do the box score. And for a number of years, I worked for United Press International, covering the Blue Jays first by doing the box score, but then by doing game stories. And I lucked into that because of him. And he developed my love of theater, my love of sports. So we were very close. And even I would phone him many days at the office to find out when he was coming home. And I phoned him this one Thursday. It was March 5th. And I wanted to make sure he was coming home in time because we were all science fiction fans, and a movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still was playing over the dinner hour. And we were all going to be in the den eating Swanson's beef TV dinners, which had the green TV. But anyways, and he said he wasn't feeling that well. He lay down at the office, but he'd be home. And he came home, and he didn't go into the den, so we knew something was wrong. And he went upstairs, and he never came down because he had a heart attack and died in the house. And so that started me in a situation of trying to find out what life was all about, because in September, one of my best friends was killed on his bicycle. And then on Christmas Eve, the little girl I babysat for died in a car crash. So over the space of March to December, 3 people who I was close to, and I hadn't really lost anyone except some grandparents, but I didn't know about that because I was too young. And that sent me in another direction again. And I closed off. I closed off to my mother especially. I closed off to people. I didn't want to get close to anyone because they would get too close and then die on me. Right. And I think it still affected me in my relationships, and it still might. But that turned young Brian and 14-year-old Brian into being optimistic but a realist, and deciding that I would go for everything I could want to go for because I could be gone anytime now. And, failure is going to happen. My father failed to be around. These people failed to be around. So I'm not going to let that stop me. So I established goals that I never got to exactly the position I wanted to be at, but I got to a point where I went, good enough. Or if I failed, I got to be to a point, well, I could fail worse.
Okay.
So that, I think, has formed my approach to saying, I want to do this. And me saying to people throughout my life, when I've been working in certain areas and people come up to me, say, can I try this? Should I try this? I go, sure, go for it. Because you don't want to turn around 3 years later and go, back then I should have, but now, I never really gotten in the responsibility of having to take care of more than myself. I've had an ex-wife. I have a partner who could buy and sell me 5 times over. I've got a stepson who makes much more money than I do. So when it comes to that situation, and we all have responsibilities, I'm just responsible basically for myself. Although I am responsible. God knows the amount of money I spent on sports tickets for my stepson.
Yeah.
The amount of money I spend, just to, keep the house going. But it's not a situation where I've ever had a company, which I've wanted to have, to hire other people to work with me, because I've shunned that responsibility because of how I've approached life.
Right. I said that one thing that I heard many years ago, but it stuck with me, is that the graveyards are full of broken dreams or unfulfilled promise. And so I've tried to keep that as my mantra as well. So, if there's something I want to do, make sure I at least give it a try, because the worst happens, right? You fail, but you're going to learn something nonetheless. When, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting. When I was in university, it was dare to struggle, dare to win. And once I got out, it was win some, lose most.
Yeah. And that's true. How many things do we, I've tried a lot of different things in my life until I really discovered, my passion and what I want to pursue. What was, what was your first, when you were thinking about your future and what you wanted to do, what did you get? Because I know you were in comedy, you got into production.
Well, comedy, I fell into haphazardly in a sense. I always looked at the people who were able to share their ideas and thoughts or entertainment. And when I must have been 7 years old, we went to Windsor, Ontario on Christmas break and stayed at the Elmwood Resort. And it had an indoor pool. It was great. We were going to go in an indoor pool, but I had a cold, so I could go to the indoor pool. So I didn't know what I was going to do. Well, the first night we're there, we go to see 2 nightclub comedians called Jack Eagle and Frank Mann. And if you know who Martin and Lewis were, or people know that, they were sort of a C version of Martin and Lewis. They were entertaining as hell. And seeing them up close, it was fantastic. During the show, they would come out from time to time and they'd run around the audience and get members of the audience to pat down their sweaty brow. And they got me, one of them, Jack Eagle. And I got a laugh when I patted his brow and my own brow. And then I adopted them for 2 days. I hung out with them. Because even at that age, I went, oh, I want this. And I'd been accustomed to getting things as a spoiled brat. And, I was very charming as a young guy. So, okay. Now, I get home. My sister Karen, God love her, she's passed away. She was the true talent in our family. I don't exactly know. I think my talent is that I don't block myself. I improvise. And usually I'm funny or come up with something that's interesting.
Right.
So my sister Karen, because it wasn't something a nice Jewish girl to do in the 60s, she was dissuaded from acting. Although she was a great actress, she sang, she won awards in high school, she was an artist. But she found this thing called Lady Featherbottom, which was a 2-person routine where I was the straight man in it.
Okay.
And she dragged me up in front of family members, and we would do this very bad routine where I had a lousy British accent, and I would always get a laugh if, were you intimate with Lady Featherbottom? Somehow. So that got me started on getting the laugh. And that happened a number of times at family gatherings and friends gatherings. And then she broke the act up to pursue a solo career. And I went into the comedy closet. Soon after that, my dad took me to a theater in Toronto called the O'Keefe Centre, which was the big theater. It opened up with Camelot before it went to Broadway. It was a touring place. Broadway shows used to tour around before it hit New York, and Toronto was the second last. So I went to see the musical Oliver on its way to Broadway after it had done in England. And that's where that goal was, to be in a musical, but not only, more important than that, was to be on the O'Keefe Center stage. I figured I can get there, it's Toronto.
Right.
So the comedy was in the background because I wanted to be an actor in a musical. And so, of course, I auditioned for everything at school, and my roles included a boy, policeman number 2, the wing commander. I never had, pirate. I never had a character where it actually had a name. It was always referred to as, the wing commander. There's the policeman, never policeman number 2. So I thought, okay, this may not happen. Well, I get to University of Toronto. I get in a review called UC Follies, which was famous for a number of things. A number of people started there, including a guy named Lauren Lipowitz, who people might know him only by the name of Lorne Michaels, the guy who started Saturday Night Live. He was in UC Follies. So I thought, okay, this is my ticket. I'm going to do UC Follies. I'll get discovered. The show was so bad it closed during dress rehearsal. At intermission, the producer comes back and says, this show, we're not putting in front of paying people. We finished the rehearsal. I'm in the backstage, and this guy comes over. He's from the Canadian Opera Company. He's looking for extras, supernumeraries. On an opera, sometimes there are people who are on stage. They don't sing. They just fill in the atmosphere. Or they carry furniture or dead bodies and stuff like that. And he offers me the chance to join the Canadian Opera Company that fall while I'm still in university. And my knowledge of opera was solely based on Warner Brothers cartoons, Kill the Wabbit, the Bunnies. I went, no, I don't want to be in an opera. And then he told me it performed on the O'Keefe Center stage. That's how I got on the O'Keefe Center stage, not by singing, but by being in a firing squad or playing an elegant gentleman and stuff like that. So I lived that dream, but not exactly like I felt. And then through an odd series of circumstances, because I was taking the new program, I was taking any course I wanted to. So I audited something called the stage management course at University of Toronto Opera School, learned about props and sets and costumes. I also wrote for the varsity newspaper. So when I graduated with a 3-year degree in nothing, there were very little choices for work. My uncle's sheet metal and roofing business, or the varsity newspaper as sports editor. The first offered me a chance for advancement in the family business and the good pay. And the second one, I got to work putting the paper together 3 nights a week and get free Chinese food. So, of course, I went for the egg roll.
Right.
But I get a call from the head of the opera company who'd become an ally. And one of the assistant stage managers on the North America tour of the Così fan tutte couldn't go in the second year. And because I took the stage management course, he offered it to me. So I didn't tour with a musical. I spent 3 years across North America as the other servant in Così fan tutte, moving furniture and throwing out people. So once again, I sort of lived my dream, but not exactly how I dreamt it.
Right.
I come back from the tour, just to get into comedy. I come back from the tour. I'm living in a house with 3 other guys, and one of them's helping out at at a show at Beth M Synagogue called Three Cheers for Showbiz, which I thought nobody ever saw. So they need help with lighting because I learned lighting. So I go up there to help with lighting. I see this most stunningly attractive woman I've ever met in my life. Her nickname is Boom Boom Varoom, this dancer. But I'd been, because when you're on tour and you meet people, not necessarily wanting to sleep with them, but because you're on tour, you drop all your pretenses.
Right.
You know how we let people in a little bit at a time? I'm going on a bus the next morning. So in Paducah, Kentucky, I stayed up with this guy all night just comparing stories on where we were and where we wanted to be. And we realized that each of us were living the life other one person wanted to live, but we were happy with where we were.
Right.
So I come off the tour. I'm doing Three Cheers for Showbiz. I get my heart torn out by a woman who I told how much I felt after 2 meetings. And so I'm not going to go anywhere near telling Boom Boom Room how I feel. Everyone else is hitting on her. It's like, I'll keep away. The 5-night party's at our house of the 4 of us. I'm in my room drinking Chivas Regal at that time. And she comes up and we chat and she goes downstairs. And a few minutes later, I go down and I see the guy who was the comic in the show. And I know ostensibly I'm funnier than this guy. I know that from just talking to people in the world. So I sit down, and when I have my time, I start to do some shtick. Shtick I've never done on stage. Politically incorrect like you would hear. But of course, everyone loved it. So, and she did too. And Gail comes over to me afterwards and says, very funny. And she was leaving. She said, I hope to see you again. I said, so do I. What she doesn't know is I know that she takes tap dance classes on Saturday morning with the intermediate group at 11 o'clock. So the next Saturday, I'm taking tap dance with the beginners group at 10 o'clock. 9-year-olds and me shuffle ball changing. And for 3 weeks, we go across the path each other. And then I invite her to go to see my mother's boss's horse runs at the Trotters. And then we spend a lot of time over the summer. And then she goes away in the fall to dance in Georgia. And I'm a little upset about that. And somebody who saw me in my living room drags me to an improv comedy show. And that's how I got into comedy.
Oh, wow. It's what I guess the question I would ask you is, where did you find the courage? I figure I was bullied and had some problems in school when I was young, and that created a lot of insecurities and fears in me that I didn't get over until I was 40 years old for some of them. Where did you find did you ever have that like doubt in your mind where you didn't believe in yourself, and then maybe it wasn't your father's death that, struck a chord that you said, hey, I can't afford to be afraid? Or
yeah, I think was that I mean, I really didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe that people wanted to necessarily be with me. I was always never part of the in crowd. I mean, I didn't have a best friend until grade 6, and Paul was my best friend, even though he played the accordion. But then he started to date my cousin, who I sort of had a crush on, but she was a half cousin. And then when I got to high school, I was not part of the crowd. And then I think it was part of my dad's death that did it. I mean, my family was very supportive. I mean, my sister especially was dragging me places, but I think it was more the fact that I could see the differences around me. I could see all these privileged people who were just letting the privilege take them where they wanted to. And I had the privilege and I lost the privilege. I didn't like not being with the privilege, but not the privilege of money, because we lost that money. And I think from 12 to 14 is where it happened. Losing that money and losing some friends when my dad got into trouble, and because we were in a pretty upper middle class area, some people were snubbing us. And then losing all those people that I was close to. I mean, yes, my dad, Stephen Mador, was the closest I had to a best friend. We were terrible. We used to tape people when we'd phone them and do prank calls. Not necessarily is your refrigerator running. Our favorite was, I'd call and I'd ask for Frank. The person goes, sorry, you've got the wrong number. A little while later, Stephen would call and ask for Frank. They go, oh, no, sorry, you have the wrong number. And then I'd call back going, hey, Frank. I go, no, there's no Frank here. And then he'd call back and go, hi, it's Frank. Were there any calls? This was and we would tape this, and this would be Steve and I. And when he died, and he was even farther outside than I was because he had muscular sclerosis. So we were called quelquefois and souvent, which means sometimes and often. That's what our radio names when we taped all that stuff. So I think it was a point where, because I had such a supportive side of my life, things were so good on one side and really upsetting on the other. And I don't think I've ever lost. I think my desire to get up there, when I was doing stand-up, my desire was, hey, love me. Hey, tell me I'm funny. Hey, accept me. And when I got burnt out by stand-up, well, I started more stellar. When I went to a place called Yuck Yucks, I started mostly doing stories, I realized. And then as the audience changed and they got to watch Evening at the Improv and stuff like that, I started to change my material. And by the end of it, I was just Mr. Insult Comic, because I was bored with doing this Kung Fu Beaver 172 times. Right. I saw people were eclipsing me because Howie Mandel and Jim Carrey had shown up in Toronto because that's where they started. I knew I wasn't that great a stand-up. I was a much better host. And it just got to a point where, okay, I defied the man who owned the club openly. I got punished. I said, I'm too old to be punished by this guy. And I walked away from the club, although we're friends because we don't have to work together. So I think that it's still part of me. I don't think you ever lose it. I don't think if you've been brought up with it, you never lose it. And I think I just reinforce it by the things I do. I mean, I now get to a position where I am, to take a hockey analogy, I love going up there and telling stories and scoring the goal. But I have a monthly storytelling show where I get other people to tell stories, or I produce some stuff for Storytelling Toronto. So I like getting the assist or being on the ice. I get the same satisfaction that I had. I mean, I got to do a television warm-up for a show on Showtime that starred Marcel Marceau and a man who I watched from when I was 7 years old, Red Skelton.
Oh, wow.
In front of 2,000 people, the biggest audience. I actually have a picture of them. And there's this one routine I did during the warm-up where I'd say, how many people have been part of a television audience before? Make some noise. How many have not? Make some noise. How many don't know? Make some noise. And always people will do that. And I go, oh, you people must be from Cleveland or Portland or whatever would come up. And we're doing it at a place called Kitchener. And for some reason, because comedy is based on music, and I had found this town on the way up, I said, oh, you people must be from Hespeler. Huge laugh. It was the second most peak experience of my life on stage. And so whenever I needed to laugh, I went to Hespeler. So, that I needed that reinforcement, but I don't yearn for it that much, because that reinforcement tells me that I am more significant than I think I am when I was picked last after the baseball bat, we'll say.
When you were doing the stand-up comedy, did you ever have a set where you just bombed and there was no laughs?
Quickly, I'll tell you about two. One, I went to see my friend's mother who was in the hospital, who was like dying, and I had to go on. Oh my God. I was terrible. From that I learned, and the next time I was bombing, I actually stopped. I was doing the feature. I stopped about 20 minutes in. I said, wait a second. I'm licking the pig here. Let's discuss where I went off track. Because in stand-up comedy, unless you're a Seinfeld or somebody at that level, usually you're performing You're watching how you're doing and thinking, where am I going to go next? Because you have to get the audience, unless they're there to see you and want to see their old favorites. You want to get the audience and keep them going. Well, I went off the track and I didn't realize I was going off the track. So I went over what I'd done and I found out, okay, they want more of this stuff. And I did that stuff. And so I get invited to do the show Evening at the Improv on A&E. And it was one Canadian would be the show every week because it was a Canadian co-production. So they fly me down. And in those days, because when I played the southern states, they go, Nasimok from Canada, you an Eskimo? So I had this whole routine about being a Jewish Eskimo and doing Inuit shtick and blubber jokes. And I come out wearing a parka and snowshoes and handing out ice cubes as souvenirs as I walk through. And I'm killing. I have visions of doing the Tonight Show. I'm thinking, this is my ticket to heaven again. And I did an Elvis joke. It wasn't a great Elvis joke. It had to do with, there was Morris the cat used to be somebody who sold cat food. And Morris the cat passed away. And my idea was that they didn't say it in the national, it was a National Enquirer piece about him, that it was a drug overdose. He OD'd on nip because he had the same vet as Elvis. This woman starts to boo and heckle me, and I sort of lose it. If it had been a stand-up club, I would have used a couple words which would have been bleeped on television. But boy, did I go downhill, and that set just went away after that.
I think Morris the cat was 9 lives, right? The 9 lives food. So he must have ran through his 9 lives.
Oh, did he ever? So yeah. So, and that was, I mean, I loved the challenge. I loved the challenge of going out there and sparring. But now in storytelling, I love the fact that if I tell a story, people might relate to it. And other than just being entertained and maybe have a thought about 1 or 2 things, here's a journey I went on. How do you relate to it? And that's the same thing we're talking about for anybody who's listening. Yeah. Here's the journey I went on. I've been blessed. You know, I really have. All the stuff that I've gone through, the bad stuff, not that bad. I didn't lose a limb. I mean, I had prostate cancer. I thought it was like the most Mickey Mouse of cancer. They just put radioactive seeds and eradicated the sucker. I was hoping I could make microwave popcorn on my groin, but it didn't work, you know? So yeah, for me, I've always said, okay, what's the flip side of this? Right. What's the flip side of me losing all those people? Well, it woke me up at 14 years old to go, wait a second. Don't just sit on your ass. And all the failures, well, I did a show so bad at YTV when I was working there as a producer. It was the first NBA draft in Canada. I had phone calls yelling at me of how bad the show was. Oh, wow. It's like, okay, that's my benchmark. Hopefully I don't do anything as bad as that. Right.
So it sounds like it's just really about reframing those negative thoughts if they want to pop up. It's looking at them in a different light. Pardon me. That sounds like for you that you looked at it as more of like it was preparation for the next step of your career or your life.
Yeah, but if you have those negative thoughts, they've passed.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not still in that negativity bubble.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a thought, you know, and I mean, I realize how lucky or blessed I am. I used to say that I must have done something really great in my last life to deserve this, through all of this, you know. But what choice do you have? What choice do you have if you don't fight what's going to overpower you? And you know, and I have bad days. I have insecure days. I have things that I've lost, and it's like, holy, why did I lose? I mean, when I used to audition, I did terrible auditions. Oh my God, when I thought I was going to be an actor, I don't know why I suck so much. And I very seldom got a role from an audition, but I got roles haphazardly. I got a film role because somebody came to see Howie Mandel in Montreal, and I was on the same bill. It's like, and then I auditioned for the next movie they were doing, and I didn't get it in Montreal. I didn't get it because I had a girlfriend at the time. When I had a girlfriend, I wasn't funny. I was enjoying life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Montreal. I'm living in Toronto. I'm in Montreal to see Sari over the Halloween period to help her sister with her Halloween party. And I find out Sari not only has a Toronto boyfriend, but a Montreal boyfriend. And I am pissed.
Oh, wow.
So I leave the party and I go to the Yuck Yucks Club in Montreal so I could take it out on the audience. All right. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get them to love me and laugh at me, and I don't care about anything else. And I go into the Yuck Yucks Club, and it's 2 days before we're going to shoot the movie that I didn't get the part. And one of my friends, the comic, Ralph Benmergui, says to me that he's given up his part. He got a better part in another movie. And the director's there to audition people to be in the movie. But because I'm a feature act, I get on no matter what. And I am hilariously funny when I'm in a bad mood. And I get the part that I didn't get when I auditioned.
Oh, wow. funny little, I think of Bob Ross, where he said there's no mistakes, only happy accidents or something like that. It sounds, let's talk a little bit about but that's another story. When did you start that series?
I started that a year and a half ago. I knew the woman who runs this cafe in Toronto called Free Time. She has a back room which is mostly used for music. And I'd become part of the Storytelling Toronto group. I'm now the secretary of the board. And so I just walking by and I went, hey, can we use your back room once a month to do storytelling? And she said, sure, why not? And it was like, okay. So in Toronto, there's a couple of groups, some traditional storytellers and some personal storytellers. So I got some traditional tellers, I got some personal tellers, and we said, okay, we'll organize it. And I got this woman who I worked with on fringe shows, Crystal Bartelsi, because she knew some of the younger tellers. So I wanted to include everybody. And so the first show, which was just week after Labor Day, because we do it once a month on usually the first Sunday, I wrote out thank you cards, and I put $10 in each thank you card for the tellers, because no matter what, it was $20. No matter what, I wanted people to get money, and we were charging $10 to get in. And I get to the restaurant 45 minutes, and the place is almost full.
Wow.
And so when I gave everybody their $20, I gave them an additional $10 because I'm a socialist, I think. and every month after that, we would sell the place out. And then, of course, with COVID, we got closed down here just over a year ago. So we did our show in March, and then we were closed. So in April, we moved online. And it's been fabulous because we now have tellers from all over who come onto our show. And since I've done shows in other places, this month I've got somebody from New Jersey, somebody from California, and then 3 other people from around here. And Crystal and I tell a story. And now what we do is we ask for it's pay what you can for just the price of $10. Each teller gets their $20. And because we don't have to pay rent anymore, we give the rest of the money to a charity. So last month, Sick Children's Hospital got $300.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a showcase for people to tell their stories. And that's my whole life but that's another story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing because, you could have looked at the COVID and said, well, we're shut down. That's it. It's a wrap. But, taking it to the virtual space and you're able to help, not just the folks telling their stories, but you're able to help, the hospital or whatever charities you guys that decide to donate to. That's just, it's another, to me, it's another, how the power of positive thinking, right? And if you don't look at it as a hindrance and you say, okay, well, that's done, but how can we keep moving forward. There you go.
Yeah, well, you know, it's good if you can do that. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a storytelling festival that was going on, and the woman who was the festival artistic director just shut down completely. And it was like, we at the board, we're going, wait a sec. In fact, we did our own sort of mini showcase. But yeah, you've got to do that. And
Mhm.
you know, I was seeing what people were doing, and I just said, okay, let's jump on that bandwagon. And it's amazing. You can find a storytelling show every day of the year going on somewhere around the world. I mean, earlier today, there was a meeting of people. They have this 99-second story slam where you have to finish a story in 99 seconds. And it's kind of competitive. But today at 3:00, people who wanted to test their stories with other storytellers were getting together. So they could say, how about doing this? How about doing that? And the same thing happened in the early days of stand-up before, you know, it got to be, wait, this is my chance to make it famous and big.
Right.
So yeah, but I understand that not everybody has been in a similar situation and can't fault themselves if they can't jump to the quick right away. I mean,
Right.
to me, I think it's because I don't know why I've always learned to improvise. And if you can improvise, if you don't block yourself, that's the problem people have. They think, I have to put it this way, they think too much.
Yeah.
Life is reacting, not acting.
And when you talk about storytellers, are these stories of, I mean, funny, sad, serious? I mean, is it all kinds of different stories, or?
It gets to be all of them. It's interesting because last month, the first storyteller, who was a new storyteller, told this story about him having an operation and what it took out of him, just going through, realizing he had to do it, realizing what the outcome could be. And I was telling my story forth, and I changed stories, and I told my prostate cancer story because I thought it was kind of interesting that, you know, I'm, 15 years free, and my sister died from cancer, and I we're all just one separation from cancer. So
Right.
I try to put some humor in. But what we try to do on our show is we try to at least feature one traditional storyteller. So you'll get a fable, you'll get a historical piece, or you'll get 3 or 4 people who are saying, here's what I've been through, here's my adventure, here's my trek down the path, this is what I went through. For the 99-second stories, they're all personal stories. I'm working on a couple right now. When I was a kid, there was a show that used to be on every year called Peter Pan, the musical.
Okay.
And there was a guy named Cyril Richard from England who played the villainous Captain Hook. And it was the first character I loved to hate, and I'd watch it every year and it'd be great. And then he came to Toronto to be in a musical. So there I am after the matinee with about 12 other 11-year-olds. Most people had their autograph books open, waiting outside the stage door, waiting for Cyril Richard. And the big moment happened, and he just walked through us and dismissed us.
Oh, man.
And oh, did that hurt.
Yeah.
But then Anthony Newley, who was in the show as well, came out. And he was so nice, and he walked us to the subway. And then he invited us across the street to meet his wife, who was in his hotel room, who was Joan Collins from Dynasty.
Oh, wow.
And she was so sweet to us because of what Cyril had done. And I say, my last line is, the next year when I watched Peter Pan, I still could hate the pirate, and I just didn't love him that much.
Right. So if our listeners here on this show, if they wanted to learn more about you or more about the but that's a different story. What do you have going on? Social media, websites?
So my name spelled oddly, Briane, Briane, Nasimok, Nasimok.ca. But it's easy to track us down on Brian. But that's another story. Ca. That's our website. Oh, it's brianenasimok.com because we got the American version.
Yeah.
I bought the American version, but that's another story.ca. I'm on Facebook. I'm available for bar mitzvahs. So I'm one more shot away from the AstraZeneca College, and then I can go on the road and visit. But yeah, no, I just and I hope that people, if people come to the show and see it and they want to tell a 7-8 minute story, you want to tell an 8-minute story, you're there. You get $20 Canadian, and you get a copy of it, and it's a relief. It really is. To share is something we all don't do enough of.
Yeah,
and especially now that we can't go out and see people, and this way you share, and it's a very supportive group.
Yeah, that in telling your story, being vulnerable. I mean, whether it's funny or sad, or just getting it out there. It's not only, I found it to be therapeutic for me, but the number of people that it could help, you just don't know. It could be that one person that one day that needed to hear something, and there you were with your story. So yeah, I always encourage everybody, get your stories out there. Don't be afraid to tell it, no matter how happy or sad the plot twists are.
So that's the great thing that you're doing, that you're sharing people's stories, and hopefully people will go, aha.
Yeah.
And that's all we can. I mean, why are we here on the planet other than to eat, drink, and be merry? We're here to leave a little something. We're gone. And if somebody can hear something and let it have an effect on them, that's great. But that's why when I saw that you were doing this, I went, hey, here's my story. Let's share it and see who says, hey, that was cool.
Yeah. And and I always take a little bit from every story, and it adds a different element to my way of thinking, or like with talking to you and hearing about the what I'm calling the happy little accidents, to where you ended up getting to where you wanted to go, but maybe not by the means that you thought you'd get there. It's just, for me, is a great reminder not to dwell on what isn't, but keep pushing forward for what you want to be. So I appreciate that.
Wow,
so
thank you.
Yeah, Brian, it's been great having you on the show. And, I'm going to keep in touch, and I'll keep an eye on you, and hopefully I think you've got a lot more story to tell. And so down in the future, I'd like to have you back on the show, and maybe we could dig a little bit deeper into your acting and producing and all that good stuff.
But, I have stories. This could be like Jaws Part 2.
There you go, Joe. Brian Part 2.
Yeah, Part 2. But yeah, and hey, one day we'll get you to do an 8-minute story.
Yeah, hey, I'd be interested. I'm gonna go check that out. Now that I've got it, the bookmark and everything, and I'll make sure all the links and whatnot are in the descriptions for everybody to go out and take a.
That'd be great. Well, and as I said, you're doing a great job here, and I'm sure people are thankful they get to hear a whole range of people who seemingly have survived somewhat optimistically.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks again, Brian, and we will talk again real soon.
I hope so.